And welcome back to Jeff Grenangate Live here at Citizen Television. Wow, what an interesting conversation we have. I told you, decades and decades of experience here on the bench. If you're an incoming CS, pen and paper, take some notes. Dalmas Otieno served 2 administrations, I tell you, and 3 ministries. Lina Jabi Kilimo served 3 ministries. Can you imagine? And Zipapa, Chirali Makwere. 5 ministries. You were saying earlier on the relationship between a minister and civil servant.
You know, the question of a civil servant hating a minister doesn't really arise. You know, Kenya has probably the best unit of civil servants in the world. And I'm serious about this. And we have been honored severally. And Dalmas knows that because he was a minister, you know, who was in charge of the civil service unit, public service. What happens here is our civil servants compete amongst themselves. If there's any element of hatred, then it's amongst themselves. Reason, they're brilliant, they want to be promoted, they want to be outstanding in the sectors that they're serving. Yeah. So they outdo themselves, you can say, to impress the minister. They don't waste time hating a minister. They spend time performing at levels that will give them recognition at the PS's level, at the minister's level, because they want to be promoted, and we make reports. There are reports of themselves prepared annually, and it's through those reports that they get identified for further promotion or whatever. So the competition is amongst themselves. If there's hatred, maybe amongst individuals. Otherwise, they are all eager to please the minister.
You were saying they made you look good. I mean, you felt like an expert.
Yeah. In fact, my advice would be to the new incoming CSs to actually just pay attention to the technocrats in the ministries they've been posted and get their briefs. From there, they'll be speaking like experts. At least me, I was briefed in all the ministries that I went, like in immigration. I actually listened, and you can look at the papers again, what they've given you, where you didn't understand, but just by talking to you and you're paying attention to that, straight away you become an expert, because they're very knowledgeable. Yeah, so let them pay attention. It doesn't matter, you don't have to have trained as a water engineer, for example. If my sister, who has been taken to the Ministry of Water, Alice Wahome, she doesn't have to have done that. But listen to the technocrats from there. She'll be talking water.
Let's mention also that there is always a head of public service. That is the head of all the civil servants, who is responsible for the overall performance of all the officers in public service. He's the one to whom the PSS report. When the ministers report to the president, the permanent secretaries, or the principal secretaries, as we now call them, report to the head of public service. And that is where performance is also gauged. And he is responsible for the overall performance of the public service in accordance with the policies guided by the cabinet. So
the head of public service is a very important, powerful person.
And he's secretary to the cabinet. He's the most powerful person in the system. And he has to be good. That one has to be good. You don't joke with that post. No. If you do, your government fails. Really? Oh, yes. You can be sure.
Before the break, I asked you, look, in your time, during Arab Moi's time, you could be fired, you could be sacked in the 1 o'clock news without even knowing.
Yes.
Was there a fear of that during that time?
Normally, it was based on issues that arise on a day-to-day basis, and you are found offside. When you are found offside, that means there were technical and political implications of what you did not do right. So the president has to take action. And normally, by the time the president is taking action, you have been under evaluation. It just doesn't come from nowhere. Because the intelligence service monitors each and every day what public servants do, including the president. The president may have the biggest intelligence file. Yeah. Every minister has an intelligence file, a whole record of what he's doing, and even an evaluation of what he's doing right and what he's doing wrong. So when something comes out that is out of the way, indicating your time should be up, the first question is the president calls the intelligence service, who come every morning. They see the president. Let a file ya huyu fulani. So when the file comes, he looks at the history, then he looks at the issue on which you have messed as of now, and a decision is made. So there is a process. It should not look as if the president just decides from nowhere that so-and-so should be fired.
No. News.
Yeah.
All of us perceived it that way.
It looks like this person is no longer consistent in action with our general agenda and the general direction the president would like to take the country. Then a decision is made. That decision is made after some very detailed analysis. I was once fired. Right? One? Yes, at 1 o'clock.
Which ministry?
We don't need to go to those particulars because in my case, it turned out the error came to be noticed.
It was an error?
Yes, and it was regretted that we fired Dalmas wrongly. Somebody misinterpreted the meaning of what I'd said in a particular place. And when it was looked at again, you see, it wasn't accurate, right?
But the news had reported you were fired.
And I was fired. There was no other chance.
Where were you in the office?
Once you are fired, you are fired.
Yes.
Yes, you go.
Were you in the office?
Yes, I was in transport. You go. So once you go, then now the public reaction follows after the firing. How did this come about? Then the people who contributed to the decision started now analyzing the process through which they arrived at that decision. And they find actually they were not very right. So I end up again being chairman of the committee that helped our government in '97 on issues which nobody else would have done.
You can take that as a governance style. It varies from individual to individual.
Yes.
There are those individuals who would take a modality of sacking people at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock news. It's a governance style. You'll get another person who will not say anything about sacking an individual. One could even be removed from office and it remains silent, won't even know that he has been replaced or his position has been dissolved or an action has been taken in that line. It's a governance style. Some styles are not good. They could give people heart attacks.
What do you think of the fact that devolution ministry has been excluded in this lineup? What do you think of that? There's no devolution ministry.
Excluded?
It's not there.
It's there.
Ministry of Devolution.
Not by what? Not by what? That was for...
No, you
can answer.
You can answer. Okay,
you were vying as a governor, you can try.
It's a question of the activities that define devolution. You don't have to use the word devolution, but you check amongst the duties given to all ministers, what functions define devolution, and you'll find that it is all incorporated. But maybe people are used to having a ministry with a with the reference of Minister of Devolution.
Yeah.
But the way I see it, what I saw was that functions that define devolution are already contained but spread all over. That's how I saw it. Maybe I did not read those functions carefully, maybe, or I was in a hurry, but that's the impression I got.
Okay, okay. Well, let me ask you this. In cabinet, when you're sitting in cabinet, all of you, how are decisions made? You know, you're sitting there, the president is there, your colleagues are there.
Cabinet is the team that runs government. And a cabinet in session is looking at issues normally documented in sessional, in cabinet papers.
Memoranda.
The cabinet agenda is supported by a dictated cabinet paper, which every minister is expected to have read fully. When the agenda item is presented, right, all the ministers are expected to look at that agenda item, look at the cabinet paper and the recommendations in that paper based on what reasons. The tendency is we always arrive at a unanimous decision, but there are serious debates sometimes. I remember an agenda that one time became very controversial. We took 4 hours. That is the longest cabinet would ever take in any agenda.
4 hours?
4 hours. Most of the times, 30 minutes, we have made a decision.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because if it is clear, the minister presents it well, the cabinet paper and the attachments and so on are satisfactory, the ministers read it before and they are happy, it is presented, and in 30 minutes, cabinet is agreed. When it is controversial, then there is an issue of every minister being expected to give a view, because the view of every minister has a bearing on what Kenyans may be feeling out there about that agenda item, right? So either we agree to defer it if we cannot develop a consensus, we defer it, tell the minister, can you go and do more research, get your officers to look at this issue again and present it at an appropriate time.
Right.
Other times, we say, we take it back to a cabinet subcommittee, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that this is looked at again by a subcommittee. Then the chair of that subcommittee will come back together with the minister responsible for the portfolio under which the issue comes and represent it to the cabinet. But otherwise, most of the items are unanimously agreed. Only very occasionally may a president want to take a vote. It's very rare that a vote may be required. But that can only be done when the president feels this matter must be dealt with. And you are the people who must deal with it.
Could you argue with your president? Were you allowed to argue with him?
You are not in cabinet, you are not arguing with the president. The president is chair of the cabinet. Yes. You are all ministers and is your chair.
Can you disagree with your chair?
You are not disagreeing. You give your view on the issue.
The paper that has been presented.
Yes. You are not disagreeing with anybody. You are saying so-and-so feels so. Me, I feel so. Based on this and that. You are not disagreeing. You are contributing to a decision that would finally be beneficial to all Kenyans.
Yes, there's something that before it reaches cabinet, and he has done well to explain, but before it reaches cabinet, the principal secretaries of the various ministries, let's say it's a bill, you want to bring a new bill to the country or take to the cabinet. So they have to go through this and see how does it affect me in this ministry, or has in that bill, has it captured the manifesto or the policies of this ministry? Are we duplicating? Do we already have something existing like that? So once the PSs have finished going through that, then now the minister, from where the bill is emanating from, now will accept and now share out with the ministry, with the various ministers, if it has been accepted that it will be presented before the cabinet. Now, the good thing about having more politicians in the cabinet, as my colleague has said, is that ministers seem to see, politicians seem to see smoke coming from everywhere, while a technocrat might not see that. Or we hear more rumors. And you know, rumor is like us, you know, where there's smoke, there is fire. So when we discuss in the cabinet, then I've looked at this bill which we are taking to the cabinet. Then I recall what ideas I have come across, what I've heard people say. Then we now say, is it okay? Is it not okay? That informs the discussion in the cabinet where it should go or not. And now the chair is just there to moderate. So there's no way you can argue with the chair. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, okay, go on.
Many cabinet papers are not just prepared and signed by one minister, because there might be issues that require legal guidance.
Yeah.
So the Attorney General would also sign. Or the same paper might require financial provision. So the Minister of Finance will also sign. They read this long before the paper is presented in cabinet.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll go there. Quite a good number of ministers are involved because they've got to make certain inputs. And the paper is as good as accepted. But then it is again discussed in details. If there are any recommendations that need to be improved or deleted, that is done. And it is usually a unanimous decision. They are very well researched by the permanent secretaries and their line directors. So when the paper is presented, it's usually a masterpiece of a document, and it's rarely rejected. There are some which are rejected, of course, or referred back to be improved to answer certain questions which have been posed by cabinet.
Right.
But in the final analysis, it's a unanimous decision, and they are thorough, and the recommendations always point at improvement of the country's development agenda.
We can mention that there is a cabinet office also. So other than those subcommittees and so on, these papers, before they are presented on the agenda of a particular cabinet meeting, there is a cabinet committee that will also have looked at the content. And if at that level they feel it is not appropriate to handle this issue, now it will be deferred, and further consultation in government would be taken into account before a cabinet paper is put on the agenda of a particular cabinet meeting. So the system is very detailed.
It's very detailed.
Yes.
And it can only be returned at times if maybe some cabinet secretaries will feel this bill or this memo does not meet the aspirations of the people, or, you know, this is a group of people who have an agenda because they are the ruling party at that particular time. Is it capturing their manifesto? Is it answering to their manifesto, which they told people they will do? If it is not, then it will be taken back so that they modify to answer to the promise they made to us.
By the way, is there such thing as junior minister or senior minister? Is there such thing in cabinet, or
no.
Did that exist in your time?
Other than the president and those days vice president and later prime minister, all others are the same level.
All ministers are equal.
Absolutely.
But they have different experiences.
Right. There could be others who are more equal than others.
And that would be on the basis of the issue at hand. Yes. If the matter is agriculture, if the matter is communications, if the matter is this, there may be ministers who, based on their earlier technical experience and capacity, they would have attained seniority professionally in a particular area. Yes. So their colleagues would wish to listen to them.
Yes.
That does not make them senior or junior to ministers, only on the issue on which we can rely on his opinion.
Very good.
There is a lot of reference to institutional memory, by the way, as papers are discussed in cabinet.
Yes.
Because as Dalmas has said, there are people have shifted ministries. And I became Minister for Transport long after Dalmas had served as Minister for Transport. So there will come a situation when I would consult him, or as we are discussing, I look forward to his comments, so that I may not repeat mistakes or fail to solve certain problems that needed attention.
Very good point.
That happens.
We're going to go to feedback on the magic wall. In the meantime, Professor John Krop Lonyangapuo. Remember him?
Yes.
Former governor?
Yes.
He's loving the show.
Oh.
Loving the show. Oh. Let's go to the wall and get some reactions. Also, John Mutudo, remember Chairman Nakada?
Yes.
Also loving the show, loving the show. Lots and lots of reactions, tweets coming in very thick and very fast. Let's see. Levi Kones says, ask the former Waziris to tell us tales of how they handled disappointments if or times they found themselves with different ideas from their boss. Also, what was the thing they didn't like about being in cabinet? What's one thing you didn't like?
Being in cabinet?
Yes.
And not liking when you have an opportunity to do what is good for Kenyans. Where does your dislike come from?
What's not to like?
No, it may be a difficult decision to make.
Right.
But like or dislike is not a very good question.
Okay, what about
when it comes to cabinet matters?
Yeah, the first part, when you find yourselves differing with your boss.
Again, you are not differing with your boss in cabinet. You are differing, you have a different view on the matter before the cabinet. You see, why would you differ with the president? The president is elected by the people. And once he's elected, that is final. So differing is not in cabinet. Because in cabinet, you are the government. So you can differ on the issues on which a cabinet decision is required. But you never differ with personalities. Either differ with your colleagues or differ with the president.
Content or the
yes, it is the issue on which you have a different view.
All right. You agree? You agree?
Yes. Yeah, you cannot differ with your boss. Yeah.
If you do, wait for the 1 o'clock news.
No, you resign yourself.
Wait till you resign.
Yes.
Dr. Edward Ogega says, ask Dalmas, if given the chance, which ministry will he like to serve? Same questions to Jabi and Wakwere. Okay, let's start with you.
Any ministry you assign to me, I'll give it content.
Any?
Any.
Even...
And I've done that.
Oh, I'd love gender. Yes, because that's what I've been campaigning all my life. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Any ministry. But some of us studied certain disciplines where we excelled at a certain level, and one would feel very, very comfortable and more resourceful in those ministries.
Right.
I'm comfortable in any ministry if I was to be. That's why I served in 5 ministries. But not most people, I'm an educationist. Yeah, I served in the Ministry of Education at various levels. Head of Education Research and Evaluation. I was in the country.
Yeah.
Deputy principal of a teacher training college.
Wow.
Principal of some high schools with A-levels. And none. So if you're in that sector, you feel comfortable. And then in transport and in all those with master's degrees, you know, MSc, transport. That was comfortable, and I stayed for very long in the Ministry of Transport. Reason, there are professionals there. A fellow of the Chartered Institute of Transport. I think there are only two of us.
Let's look at it.
When you are given any ministry, it becomes exciting in one way, that you are learning something new or you're managing something different from what you know professionally. And that's extremely exciting, very, very exciting. And you end up realizing that there are areas of development which are more challenging and more interesting than what you even studied.
Absolutely.
That question would arise when you are talking of a coalition cabinet. Where there is a coalition government, that means you have two different manifestos and you are pulling them together. So the coalition partners tend to choose ministries that appear to them to have greater relevance to the agenda that is priority to their party. Then they will pick ministries.
Yes.
Right? We want agriculture because our manifesto has a stronger content and we have a higher priority in agriculture.
Right.
Others would do in transport, others would do all the other ministries.
Yes, energy.
But when you are ministers of one party, one president, right, one manifesto, then the question of I want this ministry or the other should be discouraged. That should be left to the choice based on your experience, your capacity, your individual relations, regional diversity, and so on, and history of what others have done and what you yourself have done. That choice can only be made through the presidency.
Very good point. Ronald Kiplangat says, ask Bonachira Zipapa, as a minister who served diligently, were the decisions he made in the ministry under coercion by the head of state, or was he given autonomy to make objective decisions?
There are certain levels, certain decisions that a minister can make with confidence. You don't have to disturb the head of state on every problem relating to the ministry. You have been given that responsibility and the president has confidence that you are capable of making decisions that will steer the ministry's activities to the desired end. However, if you have a problem that requires guidance from the president, there are modalities of approaching him, not during cabinet meetings, but the president used to give us audience, and you'll get guidance that will help you perform your duties. I never worked under coercion.
Okay.
At all.
At all.
At all. In fact, it was a very pleasant.
We put it this way.
Yes.
That expression coercion that cannot apply to a ministerial decision. Because if there is a decision the minister notices is likely to generate divergent opinion from among the members, and he would know that through the process, then he would decide this one needs to be in a cabinet paper so that all the colleagues, the entire team in government, have a view and make the decision. So it cannot be the minister who was coerced.
Right.
Coerced may apply to very small decisions that you may be told, handle this in this way. Not that they are totally absent. It only means you are not well prepared yourself and you needed guidance from senior colleagues.
This is one liner from Newton that says, what makes a minister fail? Is it the team? Is it what makes a minister fail?
Not working as a team with the technocrats under the ministry where he works. Definitely you will fail.
What makes a minister fail? Failure to keep the team under the ministry together to be able to deliver on the agenda assigned under that portfolio. And sometimes some ministers fail without anybody saying anything about it. They achieve nothing. That means the issues there, the understanding of the issues may be lacking or wanting. And
sometimes they fail because their own individual behavior.
Yeah, you know, they can fail.
Maybe conceited, bossy.
Right.
You know, that's individual behavior, and that can create failure in the achievement of the...
Good point, good point. Thomas Mosoti is saying, what is their take on having a prime cabinet secretary?
Just before that,
yes,
we had introduced a performance management system which would cover all the functions of every ministry.
Yes.
And would give performance targets on each of those functions. So under performance management, it would be easier to technically tell whether a ministry has failed to achieve those deliverables as specified in the performance targets. It is not the minister. The minister is responsible as the head of the ministry, but it is the ministry as a whole, and the minister is responsible as the head, that those deliverables under performance management were not done. That is maybe the question motivating, the answer motivating the question, what makes a minister fail?
Okay.
Only where there are performance targets.
Good point.
And standards.
Okay, let's get back to Thomas Masoti's question. What's your take on a prime cabinet secretary? Is it a good idea? Equally, in school, we are taught of meritocracy. Has it been applied in Ruto's appointments? Let's take on the prime cabinet secretary first. Your thoughts, Mesh?
It's absolutely in order. The name may change: prime cabinet secretary, prime minister, chief minister. There is need for that to bring about closer coordination of functions at a certain level. And mark you, that does not bring any conflict with the role played by the deputy president. And I know somebody's going to ask that. The roles are as clear as day and night. It's only we, wananchi, who tend to imagine that there will be a conflict. There will be no conflict. I may extend that one further. We're making references to the Serikali ya Mkate, where there was our prime minister and our vice president who are at loggerheads every time, vying for supremacy. But that's a different context. That was a prime minister with a very strong body of members of parliament. Powerful prime minister. He had members of parliament more than the president.
Right.
The president's party. So it was a different context. And the deputy president, who is number 2, had fewer members of parliament, and governance of the country requires the input of parliament. So at that time, there was a conflict. I'm the prime minister, but I've got more members of parliament. You are the vice president, but you got 1 or 2 or 3. So it became a problem. But right now, it's different. Right now, the president is the same party as the deputy president. And they have a huge body of members of parliament. The chief minister or prime cabinet secretary has his team, all right, but he does not have a big body of members of parliament as the deputy president. So the seniority becomes extremely clear, and there will be no conflict. Fight for what? I mean, it's not the same as the Nusu Mkate government. That was a totally different scenario. Now, to your question, pass.
The meritocracy part.
No, mine, I would say that to that,
yes,
that the end justifies the means. Kenyans are expectant of good things. And I believe that His Excellency, by appointing a chief minister and having a deputy minister, is how does he meet the expectations of Kenyans? How does he perform to our expectation? So I believe it's a way of just meeting the desires of Kenyans.
Yeah.
2 things I would say. First, the executive authority is vested in the president. And the president delegates executive authority to the different ministers. He also, to the deputy president and the other ministers. if the president decides to delegate certain executive authority which he has and place them in the hands of a minister that is just not in charge of a portfolio, it's a minister whom he can instruct or direct or request to address issues that cover more than one ministry.
Yep.
And that issue is not going to be placed in the hands of the deputy president. It is in order to have a chief or prime cabinet secretary. The title is not in law, and the functions are not in law. So all the functions of the deputy president and the prime cabinet secretary are delegated functions from the president.
Right.
The content and weight depends on what impression the president wants to achieve. But you have to realize that we are still largely a tribal society. So in the process of image management of a presidency or of a cabinet, the president may decide to allocate certain functions to people from different regions to convey a message: I am with all of you.
Right.
Don't feel in any way left out. And as I proceed, let us all do so in unity and in our party.
Yeah.
Good point, but you can't please all the people all the time.
You can't, not all the time.
Right. Okello Mwalimu is saying, can the panelists comment on the popular belief that once their tribesman or tribeswoman is appointed to the cabinet, then the entire tribe or clan is in government?
I thought you just answered that.
I think so.
Yes.
It is image management. And in image management depends on the level of our current development. We are still at a level where image is seen to be reflected from tribal groupings, right? So we belong to this tribe, and even within the tribe, we belong to this clan and that other clan. So the feeling and the view of representation, our people still take it that far to be representing a tribe in whatever you are doing, representing a clan, whatever you are doing. People want the image of their person being seen there so that they may feel they belong. So that is the question he's trying to ask us.
Yes.
And it is both sides. It is what the presidency feels and also what the people feel. And if the president takes action that is consistent with what the people feel, they will say, we belong.
A key observation here is that, unfortunately, we Kenyans are developing on tribal lines politically. And if the trend is not addressed, then even in the very near future, we'll have parties which will pose as national, but they're purely tribal. And it will be parties forming coalitions, and it will be actually coalitions of tribes. Now, that is a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a problem that will require an approach that will balance the expectations of other tribes in the government that is in power. And the need for getting people from different tribes to participate in governance will have to be given priority, unless we succeed in detribalizing political parties and activities.
Yeah.
Because even right now, if one analyzes deeply, parties are highly tribal, very. And it's, to me, it's a scaring scenario, because some tribes are so small that if they form their own party,
You have a cabinet of 53 members.
it's actually a challenge to all Kenyans. It's a challenge to all of us to make sure that we tone down on tribal considerations so that if you don't have somebody in cabinet from your tribe, you say we have been left out. It's a problem. And we should not imagine that it doesn't exist. It's a very serious problem. It must be addressed so that it does not escalate.
But Jeff, I can tell you,
yes,
when we made the decision to limit the cabinet to 22 members, we arrived at that decision that we had 47 counties. So we said that if we have 22 cabinet members, we are going to have a minimum of 22 principal secretaries. And no cabinet member and a principal secretary in practice should come from the same county. In which case, all the 47 counties would have either a principal secretary or a cabinet secretary.
in theory.
In theory.
In fact, there is no reason why it should not be in public, in practice,
Yes.
because that was our intention. It was 47, there would have been 24 portfolios. We thought there were too many. Remember, there was a time we had 32 portfolios.
42.
42.
Yeah, there were 42.
42.
There were 42.
What?
So
Then
we
Mr.
said there should not be another opportunity where we have too many cabinet ministers if the quality of a cabinet secretary is of the high standards that we require. Then you cannot go and give him a small portfolio and maybe 2 or 3 people to look after. So we said we limit it to 22. But each of them will have a principal secretary. And in practice, no cabinet secretary.
44.
Yes.
Plus the president and deputy, that's
46.
46.
It will be 47.
Head of public service.
Head of public service or secretary to the cabinet.
Yes.
47.
Yeah.
From all the
So
47 counties.
that was the calculation.
All right, here's a question from Vivian Stacey saying, should there be any education qualification requirements for cabinet position? Interesting. Education qualification.
What is that?
Degree or...
Yeah, I mean,
My immediate answer is no.
Okay.
I want to listen to what the others
No.
say.
No, what you want is somebody, I told you a cabinet minister or cabinet secretary could be taken as a coach of a team. What matters is winning matches. Or tell him as the team manager. If things get wrong, he's sacked. If he can train his team as the team manager, then he continues if he's coordinating well and so on and so forth. Now, you don't have to be a person with a chain of degrees, even a single degree, because I know some people who were ministers during our time who had no degrees, but they're excellent performers in the management of their ministries. Allow me even to mention a name because...
Go on.
Because I honor him. To me, he's one of the best. He's saying no.
Don't give any name.
Okay.
It is helpful if somebody has a certain strong qualification, university degree, and so on and so forth. It is helpful, no doubt about it. But to say it must be people with degrees would be wrong, because they're individuals who are extremely intelligent. They didn't have the opportunity, and they're extremely resourceful, and they can manage affairs in a manner.
Tom Boyer was one such example.
You told me not to mention names.
and you're mentioning...
He's already dead.
Even the one I wanted to mention is already dead. Jenga Karume was one of them.
Yes.
Excellent minister. The input he was making was just exemplary in many cases. So to give a... To say somebody must have XY qualifications would be wrong. Just identify
to me,
competent
they must
people.
be able to read and write. That is the basic. After that, they have this other ability, you know, of maybe leadership. They are natural leaders. They are people who have got wisdom, inborn wisdom from them. So qualification, read and write.
Let's be honest.
Yes.
But it helps to be...
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
at the level of Cabinet Secretary, there are certain values and principles for which you must have sound absorption, sound understanding, sound application in practice. This is a matter we debated for so long when we were doing the Constitution 2010. Yeah. And we even agreed that the minister, the requirement usually is experience, but experience must also be based on some level of academic achievement. We were looking at all the functions of a minister. When it comes to legislative function, ability to understand that area of ministerial performance was necessarily going to require a minimum academic achievement. Minimum. Yes. But when you bring in experience in particular functions, that experience can be large enough, can be deep enough, can be vast enough to be more than the previous academic achievement which you may have undertaken 20, 30 years ago and is no longer relevant. But it helped you to absorb the necessary experience to help the decision-making process in a ministerial portfolio. We had initially put, you must be a graduate, but it has been postponed 3 times. Oh. Because when we first agreed on it, I didn't know we had 66 MPs, ministers, and assistant ministers who had no degrees.
66.
66, and including good names of known performers, like Ntimama. You see?
Yes.
So when I looked at, in practice, historically, how ministerial portfolios have been managed, how government has been run, by who? Was it by those with academic qualifications, or those with experience, or those with good network of relationships that made them succeed in whatever they were doing? We say a straight academic qualification alone does not need to be in any law, but definitely we hope the president appointing ministers will know in which portfolio does he need capacity based on both academic achievements and experience and other well-developed personal capacities.
Okay, good point. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Brian Misolo is saying, one advice to the opposition. One piece of advice. Starting with you. One piece of advice.
By opposition?
No, to the opposition. Just advice, yeah.
The opposition?
Yes.
Why did you start with me?
Yeah, the first one on that side.
Yeah.
The opposition, but I'll refer to the opposition as members of parliament or senate or MCAs at a certain level. Their role is not just to oppose. Their role is to ensure that the country advances, problems are solved, programs of action are implemented for the benefit of wananchi. Their role, when we hear of opposition in Africa, we think of people who are saying no to everything. No. In fact, their role is to ensure that if the government is doing something wrongly and the nation and individuals will not benefit at all, it will retard progress. It's not productive at all for the improvement of lifestyles. That's when they make comments with suggestions, not just say, no, this is not good. They must come up with suggestions on what must be addressed to ensure that the country progresses further. But I don't know.
To me, they should be more present in parliament during debates so that they bring the other side of the coin into the debate. Yeah.
Good. Real quick, much more.
I look at opposition as a team that is expected to develop alternative strategies for the socio-economic and political development of our country. It is another team different from the existing executive team. Not just opposition in parliament. Opposition in terms of looking at alternatives, the situation of the republic as a whole. What is it we have been doing well? What is it the current government is doing well? Where are the shortfalls in the management of our affairs by this current government? Then, as a team, they formulate alternatives which they can then sell to Kenyans at the next elections so that they are voted in. When they are so voted, the alternative management would have the effect of driving the country in a better direction, but they will also have their limits. So that the opposition, after they win, the new opposition, would be doing the same. That the competitiveness must be incorporated in our systems, because it is out of competition that man, the human being, is known to perform better.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Good point, good point. Henry Indindi is saying there can never be a better school of governance than this bench today. Wow, okay. Salamu zangu kwa mawaziri hawa wa siku. Walking governance institutions here. Congratulations to all of you. Let's conclude the show by giving advice to these incoming CSs. Let's start with you. Ladies first. Ladies first. Advice to these incoming CSs once they're approved and appointed.
To live to the manifesto. What their manifesto, what they promised us. And that's why they won, because what was in their manifesto was bought by Kenyans. So they should live to that. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Zipapa?
They must be consultative. Consult even those who are in the opposition. Consult. And by so doing, they will achieve more and they will have less opposition, because there are so many brilliant ideas hanging around here and there. Bring them closer. But of course, not to divert from what appears in their manifestos, but go for consultation. Consult as broadly as possible, not even amongst politicians alone, the business sector, the industrialists, wananchi at certain levels. Through consultation, they will achieve a lot. Ministers.
Much more closing thoughts. Last word.
For individual ministers, they should always ask themselves, within this portfolio, what is it we must do better? In every portfolio, they have the history, they will have the brief, and they must strive to improve on the performance under that portfolio. As a team, they should look at how can we accelerate the total socio-economic and political development of our country for the better. I'm saying so because the countries that have done best have always worked on performance, standards, and on targets of performance. And they apply them very strictly. We have not reached that. So you'd find some ministries, after 5 years, ask them, table for me what you found, what you have improved, what you are proud of at the end of it. They would have a hard time making that response. So, yes, given that our birth rate is fairly high as of now, our youth unemployment is very serious as top challenges which must be addressed in this country, and will only be addressed by increasing investments and reducing consumption, by advocating efficiency, by removing things like corruption, which is wastage and theft in our public administration. It is so important that we have a cabinet committed to the better performance of our political economy in competition with all other political economies in the continent and in the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Dalma Sotieno, Lina Jabi, Kilimo. Chirao Alimwakwere, zip-up, zip-up, zip-up. What a brilliant conversation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful, wonderful. By the way, are you surprised that nobody was retained from the former cabinet? Except Monica Juma, who is a national security advisor. Nobody else was retained.
Chelugui?
Oh, Chelugui, yeah.
The three of them. Ababu Namambo.
Okay, he was here, yes.
Can I make a request?
Go on.
That the Cabinet Secretaries coming in, please continue with the campaign for the abandonment of FGM in our country.
Very good. Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. Hope you've had gained as much knowledge as we have from this show, folks. I told you, decades and decades of experience right here. Incoming CSs, hope they're taking note, as Kenyans were. Thank you so much for being a part of Jeff Koinange Live. Remember, every Wednesday,
thank you.
It's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thank you so much, folks. Good night, good luck. God bless Kenya.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zip-bop, zip-bop.